skirts on. My skirts are gathered on a belt, and they're clear down to my ankles. My veil, of course, is down to my knees in front and that long in the back. How will I ever get over those sharp points? And I thought, I can't go down. I don't have strength enough, so I'll have to jump. And if I jump, I'll break every bone because I was broken body, of course. And you know, I thought, what I'd do? Well, I pulled all my clothing up around my body and held them with one hand. And then I thought, I'll have to jump. And you know, they have a buzzer in the convent. And when a little nun tries to escape and they catch her, they put a buzzer on. And oh, if the priest tell you they don't come to the convent, I would you could see the priest then. You'll find a good many of them there. And they immediately are after that nun. They don't want her out. If she comes out of that convent, she's going to give a testimony someday. And it'll pull the cloak off of convents. And I'll assure you they don't intend for us to get out. And so as I let loose to that top of that gate and I made that jump, I just didn't make it. My clothing caught on top of those points and I hung there, but I'd let loose. And I often say, you know, I don't know what I look like. I didn't know I had gray hair, but I've often said maybe my hair turned gray there. Maybe you'll never know what I suffered hanging on top of that gate, knowing that buzzer can go on any minute, and then what would they do to me? I was scared. So I thought I tried to wiggle my body and to swing it. If I can get back far enough to grab the gate with one hand, maybe I can help myself, and I did. And then with the other hand, I tried to pry the snappers loose on my skirt, and that let me fall between them. Do you know what happened to me? I hit the ground. I was out. I was unconscious for a while. I don't know how long, though we have no way to tell. But when I came to, I had a shoulder broken and my arm was broken right in here. The flesh, the bone had snapped right through my flesh because I didn't have any meat on me. And I thought, what'll I do? And I realized I'm on the outside. And where am I going? Where do you think you'd go? I'm not in the United States. I'm in another country. And I don't know a thing about that country. When they took me over there, I was so heavily veiled. And they took me from that particular cart or train to the convent. I was so heavily veiled I couldn't see anything. And I don't know where I am. I don't know where to go. I don't know if I have any people. I don't know if I know anybody in the world. Now, I'm a pauper. I don't have any money, and I'm hungry. And my body's broken, and I'm hurt now. Where do you think you'd go? I tell you, it's something to think about. I just started away, but get away from the convent, and I did, and I started moving away. And all the leaves were falling, and they made so much noise, and I was scared, and I kept on moving. And finally, dark overtook me, or rather, there's no twilight in that part of the country. It just drops off into darkness. And, you know, I saw this little building beside the road, and I thought I'll crawl in it. It was a doghouse or maybe a chicken coop or something, but it's dirty, and I crawled in there because I was shaking and scared. And I laid in there for a little while to get a hold of myself, and then I thought I'll have to travel. It's dark. It's safer for me. So I got out and traveled that night, and the next day I hid behind pieces of board and tin that was piled up against an old building, and all day long imagine hiding in that hot place. And hungry as I was, with broken bones, do you realize what it was all about? No, you'll never know. But I do. And then, you know, when night came again, I have to go, because I'm going to get away from the convent. I'm afraid to rap on somebody's door. Remember, I'm scared. I don't know. I might rap on a Roman Catholic's door. They will immediately notify the priest, and I'll be taken back to the convent. And I'd rather they kill me than take me back. And so I didn't. But I went on and on and on. And then the next day, I hid out in an old straw stack. And then that afternoon, on the third day, I was scared then, because this arm was swollen as tight as it could swell. And I was having to carry it in the other hand. And all my fingers began to turn blue, and I realized gangrene poisoning setting in. And, you know, nobody to do anything for you. And I realized I'm going to die just like a rat beside the road. That's a terrible feeling. And I thought, what'll I do? I'll just get out and go a little sooner. Maybe I'll have to rap on somebody's door. And that's what I did. And I remember as I walked, I don't know how far, I saw this lamp. It was an old-fashioned lamp burning. Very poor house, no paint on it. And I knew those were poor people. So I walked up to the screen door, and I rapped on it. And a tall man came to the door. He was rather old. And I said, please, may I have a drink of water? And you know, that old man didn't answer me, but he walked back in the house and called his wife. And God bless her heart, she's like most old-fashioned mothers. She came to the door, and she didn't say, who are you, and what do you want? Thank God. There are a lot of good people in this world. That dear little woman just pushed that door open and said, won't you come in and sit down? Do you know that's the most beautiful music I've ever heard in my life? I should say I'll come in and sit down. And she pulled out a chair. And I sat down on it, glad to sit down. And you know, their house was poor. There was no rugs on the floor of any type. A tablecloth, red checkered tablecloth on the table, a little old stove over there in the corner, and there was a fire in it. And that woman put some milk in a pan and heated and brought it over to me. And you know, I'm hungry. I don't have any manners. I forgot how to act. I forgot a lot of things in 22 years. And I grabbed that glass of milk all before she ever set it down, and I gobbled it down. I'm so hungry, I felt like I'm going stark mad. And I took it instantly, and the moment it touched my had any whole milk in 22 years. You could understand why I couldn't take it. And she knew what to do. She went out in the kitchen, she heated some water, or rather over to the stove and heated some water. And bless her heart, she put sugar in that water and brought it over to me. And she sat down and gave it to me from a spoon. I took every bit of it. Oh, it was good. It was nourishing. And then the daddy walked over by me and he said, now tell us who you are and where'd you come from. I began to cry. I was scared then. I said, I run away from the convent and I'm not going back. And he said, what happened to you? And my hand was laying upon the table. And I said, well, I tried to get over the gate and I fell and I'm hurt. And you know, he said, we'll have to call a doctor. And bless your sweet life. Then I really became hysterical. I got up from the table. I was going to run back outside and they wouldn't let me. He said, wait a minute, we're not going to hurt you. You're hurt. You have to have help. I said, I don't have any money and I don't have any people. And I can't pay a doctor bill. Of course, I was just in a terrible mess, if you want to know it. And that man said to me, I'm going after a doctor. He said, and he's not a Roman Catholic. Neither am I. That dear man didn't have a car, but he took a horse and buggy, and he drove 9 miles to get a doctor. The doctor came out in his car, and when he got out to the place, he got there ahead of the man. And when the doctor walked in and walked around me, he just kept walking around me, and he was swearing. Maybe he didn't realize it was a terrible effect on me. When he stopped and looked at me, of course, he was mad. He was mad. Why was he mad? He was mad because he was looking at something that was supposed to be a human being. And I didn't even look like a human being. I was in such a horrible condition. But finally he calmed down. He came over to me and he said, I'll have to take you to the hospital tonight. Oh, I became hysterical. I said, I don't want to go. Please don't make me go. And then he sat down carefully and took my hands. And he began to say, I'm not going to hurt you. You have to have help. And I want to help you. That doctor took me into the hospital that night, and that's where I learned how much I weighed. He weighed me, and I weighed exactly 89 pounds. I weigh 178 right now. And then, you know, they took me into surgery, and of course they tried to get the swelling and the inflammation out of my hand and arm, that they might do something for me. It took about 12, 13 days. And then, of course, they had it, but this time it started to knit, and they had it all to break over it again and put it in a cast. I did a lot of suffering. Well, you know, one day a way was made for me to be released from the hospital. Who did they release me to? I begged to go out to those old people to stay with them, and they let me go because they'd been good to me, and I trusted them. And the doctor wanted to take me out to his home. I was in that hospital 3.5 months. And they took me out there, and I stayed for a period of time. And then one day, this same doctor, he wrote a letter, and you know what he said in that letter? He sent a check. He told the people to go and buy me a suitcase and get me some clothing. He was coming for me on a certain day. He had told me, I'm going to find your people for me. You know, that doctor's a stranger to me. But oh, I thank God that he has men and women across this world, and those men and women are not so selfish that they won't use some of the money that God has allowed them to have to help that one that's less fortunate than they. He spent a lot of money on me. I was in that hospital 3.5 months, and I mean there was a lot of money spent on me, but he paid the bill. How I appreciate it. And you know that dear doctor, they took me, bought my clothing for me, got my suitcase, and everything was ready. And the day came when he came, and you know that doctor took me to the train. And he put me on a train in care of somebody, of course. He had found my people for me. I was on buses and trains and boats for a long time, and one day, after that, he had gotten my visa to get back into the United States. And I was always in charge of somebody because they wouldn't trust me to travel alone because of having lived under the ground so long. And one day, they called the name of a town where I was, or where my mother and daddy lived. And you know, I knew where mother and daddy lived, and I got off of that train and run down to their home, 5 blocks from that depot, just a very small town. And when I rang the bell, my daddy come to the door, and you know, I looked at his face. I didn't know him. And because I didn't know him, I said, do you know where my father lives? And he said, who are you, and what's your name? And I said, my name, and I didn't give him my church name. I gave him my family name. And that man looked at me, and of course it was his name, and he said, Hooky, is this you? My father didn't know me, of course. It was my dad. That dear old man opened the door then and invited me in, and I said, Dad, is mother alive? Because I didn't know about her. And he took me back in to see her, and there she was. 7.5 years she'd laid there an invalid, a horrible, horrible invalid. And of course she didn't know me, and I didn't know her. Well, you know, that very night I took violently sick, and they put me back in another hospital for another 3 months. But my father paid all of those bills. He reimbursed